Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Film 101. I'm Jefferson Hendricks of the Robinson Film Center and Centenary College of Louisiana, where we continue to talk about our theme of the fantastic. Alyssa Fife, my co-host, is still on leave working on an academic project, but will be joining us next week. The film this week that I'd like to recommend to you, if you haven't seen it already or maybe want to return to it, is the 2015 film The Witch by director Robert Eggers. Eggers is still a very young man. This is his first film, filmed on a small budget of about $4 million, but it was quite successful when it came out and won numerous awards and made over 40 million, which is a good return. It was a very highly thought about film among film critics and did well at the box office. And if you haven't seen it, which you may not have because it was a relatively small independent film, if you like horror films and if you like psychological drama, I would recommend this strongly. So, what is it about? It is set in 1630 Massachusetts, where a newly arrived immigrant family, as everyone was in 1630 in Massachusetts, from England, this family is kicked out of their village, excommunicated essentially, because the father is a bit egotistical and the father has his own very strong feelings about his religion, and he clashes with the government of the town, with the religious government. And so they essentially excommunicate him. His family is forced to leave the village. They travel and go away from civilization, finally to set up their own home, to start from scratch in this large meadow next to a very foreboding and dark forest. Indeed, the story of many folk tales, as Eggers entitled or subtitled this film, A New England Folk Tale. Everything is hard, of course. These are immigrants and they are creating their world from scratch with their own hands. But life is adventurous until one day something happens to their newborn child, Samuel. And I will leave it up to you to see the film and to go from there. I don't want to give too many spoilers away. But let me say that the film then descends into an examination of what happens when several things coalesce to produce a rather horrific experience. So, why watch this film? If you're interested in horror, psychological horror, this is a really powerful and well-made film. Eggers started out as an actor and then moved into production design. And you see that here in this film. The costuming, the setting, the dialects that the actors use, and almost all of the actors are British, as it should be in 1630 Massachusetts. These people still very much think of themselves as British citizens, which they are. I would say that the period detail is excellent, at least. So if you're interested in American history, if you're interested in this early Puritan experience, if you're interested in the connection between the frontier experience, the wilderness experience, and the role that religion played in this Puritan experience, this is a film for you. If you are interested in American history in general, and if you're interested in American culture and literature, if you know The Scarlet Letter by Hawthorne, if you know Young Goodman Brown, the short story, if you know Arthur Miller's play from the 1950s, The Crucible, you know that that Puritan experience is fraught with this tension between the natural and the supernatural. And I think that Eggers' production of The Witch holds both of those up simultaneously for us to try to figure out. Of course, if you're interested in horror, you're often interested in thinking about the supernatural. Is there something beyond this empirical world that we experience through our senses? Is there something beyond what Freud called the uncanny, that which is mysterious and strange and which can't be explained by logic and reason? This film absolutely explores that. It is entitled The Witch, and so what we have is the possibility that there are witches living in the forest near this family. There's the possibility that indeed some of the family members themselves are tainted by a connection to these possible witches. What I think is most interesting in the film myself is the exploration of human psychology here, particularly the experience that the Puritans had, which is still relevant somewhat to many people today. As we all know, many of us have fears of the unknown. That is a basic human trait, which is generally a positive trait. Go prepared. Be that Boy Scout or that Girl Scout. When you're entering something new, be prepared for it. Not bad advice most of the time. And so the Puritan experience, or the general immigrant experience, has this component. And the frontier and the wilderness, which have always been at the edge of civilization in American culture, that drive to go west, that drive to seek out spaces where people can be free, where they can be themselves, where they can have opportunity to create a new world for themselves. This film explores that. What it leads to, of course, is an examination both in that world of the frontier is often a violent world. It's not strictly a utopian, Arcadian world of the pastoral tradition. It often gets created out of a kind of violent wrenching of nature. But still, it can be both beautiful and fearful at the same time. Also, the film explores the nature of family relations. This family lives strictly among themselves. They don't have any neighbors unless there's something living in the woods nearby. And one thing that we see that Eggers is interested in exploring is what happens, like all of us are living in quarantine right now with our families perhaps, what happens when families don't have an outlet, a release, if you will, to get outside of that tight unit, and when you're with people all the time. Sometimes those relations get frayed, they get tense. Certainly that happens in this film. The film also examines the notion of religious extremism. This is a Calvinist family, a Puritan family, and it raises the issue basically of sin and damnation, or being among the blessed and the faithful and being saved. And for the Puritans, they never knew really which they were. Their life was a struggle to find that out, a struggle to live and hopefully end up on the side of the righteous and the saved. At the same time, the Puritans also believed in the concept of evil. For them, the devil, Satan, was a real presence, a live possibility in the world. And what we see is this family unraveling as those tensions coalesce. So by the end of the film, which I certainly don't want to get away, and which is the most controversial and debatable part of the film. Controversy in that you can interpret it in a couple of different ways. I think the film asks us to think very hard and experience in a very positive way this notion: does psychic disturbance lead to evil, and does it lead to the difficult and complicated and sometimes horrible experiences that humans have? Or is there some active presence above and beyond us that causes that? And what is the relationship between the two? So I think The Witch explores these ideas, these themes. If you're an American history buff, I think you'll love this film. If you are someone that's interested in psychology, I think you'll like this film very much. So it's highly recommended. It is a bit violent in places, though nothing compared to something like Game of Thrones. But it is psychically violent and certainly interesting, even if for some people it's a bit of a slow burn in the beginning until it heats up, if you will. So if you're interested in The Witch, if you like Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, if you like Rosemary's Baby, perhaps The Omen, The Exorcist, though there are no heads spinning in this one, I think you'll like The Witch. So take care and look forward to seeing you next week, and be well.